Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the Life Divine with our beloved Ranga. We are getting close to the end of this chapter, Indeterminates and Cosmic Determinations. We are on page 333, the last two lines.
Before we read the para, as usual, I will tell you what he has said in the previous paragraph so that we get the continuity. I am reading out the summary of the para. There is no text, you don't have it. Each aspect, each feature of the cosmos has its archetype or the blueprint, if you want, in the Supreme Absolute. Even the inconscient has its corresponding truth in the superconscious. The lowest is involved in the highest, just as the highest also is involved in the lowest. It is the power of self-absorption, self-concentration into an abyss of self-oblivion, of non-manifestation. But the inconscient contains all the infinite possibilities of creation. But the evolution obeys its own laws of slow manifestation and self-opposition. It creates opposites and dualities, and through this it slowly works out its evolution upwards. This is what he said in the previous para. Now, I'll read the whole para first, and then we'll go into each sentence. It is important to observe here the sense that is acquired in such a total cognition of cosmic being by the phenomenon of the ignorance, its assigned place in the spiritual economy of the universe. If all that we experience were an imposition, an unreal creation in the Absolute, both cosmic and individual existence would be in their very nature an ignorance. The sole real knowledge would be the indeterminable self-awareness of the Absolute. If all were the erection of a temporal and phenomenal creation over against the reality of the witnessing timeless eternal, and if the creation were not a manifestation of the reality but an arbitrary self-effective cosmic construction, that too would be a sort of imposition. Our knowledge of the creation would be the knowledge of a temporary structure of evanescent consciousness and being, a dubious becoming that passes across the vision of the eternal, not a knowledge of reality. That too would be an ignorance. But if all is a manifestation of the reality and itself real by the constituting immanence, the substantiating essence and presence of the reality, then the awareness of individual being and world being would be in its spiritual origin and nature a play of the infinite self-knowledge and all-knowledge. Ignorance would be only a subordinate movement, a suppressed or restricted cognition, or a partial and imperfect evolving knowledge with the true and total self-awareness and all-awareness concealed both in it and behind it. It would be a temporary phenomenon, not the cause and essence of cosmic existence. Its inevitable consummation would be a return of the spirit, not out of the cosmos to a sole supracosmic self-awareness, but even in the cosmos itself, to an integral self-knowledge and all-knowledge. The language is not very easy, but we'll go into it. Before we go into it, I'll give you a background of what he's saying so that it becomes easy to understand. The problem that we are facing, and he's discussing here, is that when you make your mind silent and go to the self, The mind becomes self and the consciousness is freed. You get liberation and you go into the spiritual planes of consciousness. Most of the time, not necessarily, but most of the time, you see the physical world as unreal. This is the problem. So, right now, everything seems to be absolutely real, solid, tangible. It seems to be real. You change your consciousness and go to the self, which is the nirvana experience. You see the physical world as only images, only representations and symbols, not the reality. So this is the problem that he's dealing with. So what is the truth? That's what Srimdu is discussing in this one. The Advaita philosophy says that the absolute reality is featureless and static. And the world is a reflection of images on this static, featureless screen. So you can think of the cinema screen, which is a very good way of understanding this. The cinema screen is featureless, white. But even white is a feature. So the self is not even white. It is absolutely featureless and it is not bordered, it is infinite. So think of a screen which is infinite, without borders, without even a whiteness. Absolutely featureless and immutable, it's not moving. That's the reality. So it may sound very funny that the reality is nothing. It's a nothing which is full of all potentialities. So it's not really a nothing, it's a nothing which contains everything. So this is the experience. This is the Advaita philosophy. Then what about the images that you're seeing in the physical world? It is the images being thrown on the screen. Your mind is the projector and it is creating images and throwing on the screen of the self, and you feel that that is the reality. Actually, if you turn the projector off, in other words, you make your mind silent. It's not making any more images. What remains? Only the self. Only the infinite self. So this is what Srimdu is discussing. Okay? So, but you don't know what it is. Which is the real reality? Is the world real, or that is real, or you are seeing things in a wrong way? That's what he's discussing. It is important to observe here the sense that is acquired in such a total cognition of cosmic being by the phenomenon of the ignorance. Now, what is the ignorance? When you see only the forms in the physical world and not the reality behind, then you are in ignorance. Okay? So, this is what you have to realize. In other words, if you want to go back to the image of the cinema, when I am seeing the images on the screen and I am involved with the story and the play that is taking part on the scene, I am totally unaware of the screen. I am seeing only the images and thinking that that's a reality. Okay? That is ignorance. Ignorance is seeing the images without seeing the reality. You are not aware of the screen. But it is also possible for you to stand back and suppose there is a funny scene going on, you are identified with the funny scene, you start laughing. You actually start laughing. When there is a sad thing in the world, we feel sad. We are seeing only the image. When there is a funny thing, we laugh. We are identified with it. We are not seeing the reality behind all this. But it is possible for a human being to stand back and say, wait. This is only an image on a screen. There is no reality to it. So you are already beginning to differentiate between the images and the screen. Okay? So, now Srimdu is discussing the reality of both, the screen as well as the images. Okay? So, and the ignorance we have defined, when you are seeing only the images, you are seeing the many and thinking it is real. That is ignorance. By the way, don't impute any negative connotation to ignorance. It's a nomenclature. It is when you are seeing the multiplicity, you can consider it ignorance, avidya. When you see the reality behind it, you are in vidya, you are in the knowledge. Because that time you realize that that is the reality, these are only images which have fleeting and transient and no permanent reality. That's the thing. So, ignorance. So, Srimdu is saying, it is important to observe here the sense that is acquired in such a total cognition of cosmic being by the phenomenon of the ignorance, its assigned place in the spiritual economy. Does ignorance have a role to play? Is it absolute unreality or is it partly real? That's what the question is asking. Okay? Does it have a role to play? Its assigned place in the spiritual economy. Yeah. Okay? The word economy is very interesting. It is used in many ways. Srimdo often uses the word economy, not in the sense of related to finance. The process. This is an archaic use of in English. The process of things is the economy. Okay? It's archaic. And remember, Srimdo wrote this back 120 years ago.
Yes, but he took it from being archaic to something real.
Yes.
So the dictionary may call it archaic, but we don't.
Okay, I go to the next sentence. If all that we experience were an imposition, an unreal creation in the absolute, both cosmic and individual existence would be in their very nature an ignorance. So, what's he saying in this sentence? If all that we experience were an imposition, I am seeing all of you sitting here, I am seeing the lights, I am seeing the cameras, I am seeing Narad, I am seeing my own computer. Are these only images on the screen? This is the question he is asking. Okay? So, if it were so, then everything in the physical world and everything would be an imposition. If all that we experience were an imposition, but the imposition he means the images, okay, which is an unreal creation in the absolute, because now it is there, next minute it disappears. So it is unreal in that sense. In the absolute, both cosmic and individual existence would be in their very nature an ignorance. Totally, if only you are seeing the images and that way the only thing, then you are totally in ignorance. You are seeing only the many permanently. You can't see the one. You can't see the screen. If it were so. Is it really so? That's what he's discussing. Such cosmic and individual existence. So, cosmic is exterior to you, the external, the objective. And individual, your own existence also is only an image. Okay? If it were so, would be in their very nature an ignorance. The sole real knowledge would be the indeterminable self-awareness of the absolute. In other words, the screen which you are not seeing would be the reality, and the cosmos and yourself all would be unreal. This is the Advaita philosophy. Okay? So, the only reality is the screen. The sole real knowledge would be the indefinable. Here he used the words indeterminable. Indeterminable means you can't describe in any way. There is no determined features. It is absolutely featureless. Therefore, indeterminable. Self-awareness of the absolute. Note the word self-awareness. The screen is not just a screen. It is aware of itself. It is Satchidananda. It's aware of itself. I started with the image of the screen, but the screen is absolutely aware of itself. So that's what he's saying. Because it is Satchidananda. That's the only reality. If all were the erection of a temporal and phenomenal creation over against the reality of the witnessing, timeless, eternal, and if the creation were not a manifestation of the reality, but an arbitrary, self-effective cosmic construction, that too would be a sort of imposition. Now he is asking whether the screen has the capacity, the reality has the capacity to express itself. Are the images being created by the reality itself, or are the images unrelated to the reality and they are being imposed on the screen? This is what he is asking. Whereas the reality is that the screen itself, the self itself is self-aware and is capable of producing these images that you are seeing. That's the difference he is seeing. Clear, na? So he is going into great detail to explain the thing. So if all were the creation. That means everything that we are seeing, the cosmos and my own existence, if all were the erection, it is being, note the word erection, constructed. A construction is also, it can be destroyed. It is not eternal. No erection is eternal. But the screen is eternal. The self is eternal. And that self is the featureless, eternal, infinite reality. If all were the erection of a temporal and phenomenal creation over against the reality of the witnessing, timeless, eternal. The witnessing, timeless, eternal is the self. Okay? And the self is the screen. I am constantly referring back to the image because then it becomes easy to understand. So the witnessing, timeless, eternal is a screen. So, and if the creation, the world that you are seeing, all the forms that you are seeing in the physical world, okay, were not a manifestation of the reality, but an arbitrary, self-effective cosmic construction. In other words, the screen itself has the capacity to produce its own images. Or is it that some other thing is throwing the images on the screen? The screen is passive without a creative capacity, and the images are being created somewhere else and thrown on the screen. They are the two possibilities he is discussing. Okay? So, were not an arbitrary construction, that too would be a sort of imposition. So, in any case, it's an imposition. Imposition, even if the reality is producing its own images, or the images are being thrown on it, both would be an imposition. There is a reality and there is a world which is being imposed on it. The images on the both would be ignorance. Our knowledge of the creation would be the knowledge of a temporary structure of evanescent consciousness and being, a dubious becoming that passes across the vision of the eternal, not a knowledge of reality. So if that were the truth, and we are seeing only the forms, then we are in ignorance. We are not seeing the reality. That's what he's saying. But it is possible to see the reality. It is possible to switch off. The man has the capacity to switch off the projection of the images on the screen and see only the screen. It's possible. That's silent mind experience. That's what happens. He's describing it as the witnessing, timeless, eternal. Okay? And if the creation were not a manifestation of the reality, but an arbitrary, self-effective, cosmic construction, that too would be a sort of imposition. In both cases, you are in ignorance. Our knowledge of the creation would be the knowledge of a temporary structure of evanescent consciousness and being. So, the whole physical world is naturally a temporary structure. If you are seeing only the images, a dubious becoming, a doubtful becoming that passes across the vision of the eternal and seeing these images, not a knowledge of reality. That too would be an ignorance. So many different types of things he's saying is ignorance. Now, he is going to the opposite of ignorance. He'll come to that. Okay? So, to make it very simple, if you are seeing only the images, whether it is created by somebody or whether it is created by another person or the cosmos is creating and throwing or the self itself is throwing and you are seeing only the images, you are in ignorance. You are not seeing the reality. And I told you, ignorance you can take it as a way of seeing the many. Okay? Don't impute any necessarily negative connotation to it. There is, but we'll see that later on. So, that too would be an ignorance. But, now, he is giving you the opposite. But, if all is a manifestation of the reality, and itself real, by the constituting immanence, the substantiating essence and presence of the reality, then the awareness of individual being and world being would be in its spiritual origin and nature, a play of the infinite self-knowledge and all knowledge. So now he is saying that let us suppose that the screen that I am talking about, that is self-aware. It's consciousness. It is not something dead. It is self-aware of itself. And it has decided to project images onto itself. That would be, and you are seeing, if that were the thing, and you have the capacity to see the screen, that would be knowledge. That's what he's saying. It is like, place 10 gold instruments, gold ornaments on a table. If I am seeing only the necklace, the ring, the earring, the nose ring, the anklet, I am in ignorance. But if I see the gold behind all those things, I am in knowledge. I am seeing the oneness of things. I am seeing the reality which is gold. The ornament is temporary. I can melt it down and make it something else. The images in the physical world are only ornaments. The self is the gold. Clear? So this is what he is saying. But if all is a manifestation of the reality, it is the gold itself which is making itself into forms. If that were the thing, then it's not ignorance anymore. That's what he's saying. But if all is a manifestation of the reality and itself real by the constituting immanence, what does it mean? When the divine creates something, he doesn't create something and leaves it alone. He enters into what he has created. The ring is a form of gold, but gold is there in it. That's the immanence. So the divine presence is there in everything, even in a stone, even in a caterpillar, even in a dog, cat, human beings. The divine is there. Immanence. Okay? That's what he's saying. Constituting immanence. It constitutes. The gold constitutes the ring. Okay? The substantiating essence and presence of the reality. Note the word substantiating essence. It is essence and also substance. It is also the form but also the essence. The gold is there and the form of the ornament also is there. Okay? So, this is substantiating presence and presence of... These words we have to think a lot and imagine what he means by substance. Substantiating means related to substance, material. Okay?
But the constituting immanence.
Yes.
Is it not the divine himself?
Yeah. It is. If the immanence is not there, the image can't exist. That's what he's saying. The reality in the form is what allows the form. You can also think of it in another way. Okay? I'm trying to broaden the thing. You can think of it in various ways. There is the origin and there is the image of it. Okay? We can think of it in so many ways, so many examples we can give. One is, you are the reality and there is a photograph of you. Okay? The photograph can't exist without you. And if the photograph is there, something of you is in the photograph. That's a constituting immanence. That's the reason why when we look at mother's picture, through the picture, we can contact mother really directly. Because the constituting immanence is there. Part of the reality is there. No? So that's what he's saying. The constituting immanence. It constitutes the essence of it. Okay. The substantiating essence and presence of the reality. There is a presence also. Then the awareness of individual being and world being would be in its spiritual origin and nature a play of the infinite self-knowledge and all knowledge. So the form that you are seeing, if that were the reality, if it's not an imposition, but the reality itself, Satchidananda is creating its own forms, and when you see both together, you are in knowledge. You are not in ignorance. That's what he's saying. Okay? Individual being and world being. Note, constantly he is talking of both individual being and world being. Would be in its spiritual origin and nature a play of the infinite self-knowledge and all knowledge. Self-knowledge and all knowledge. the individual self-knowledge, all knowledge of the universe. If that were so, then it's a play. The divine is the immutable and he is creating his own images and enjoying it. It's a play. And the world is not unreal. The world is temporary forms, but real forms in time and space. That's why they seem to be transient, but they are not unreal. Two ways of looking at it. Okay, so then he's saying, and spiritual origin and play, a play of the infinite self-knowledge and all knowledge. Ignorance would only be a subordinate movement. In other words, when you are not seeing the reality but seeing only the forms, it is ignorance. But it's a secondary reality. It's not the reality. It's not a primary reality. It's a secondary reality. Just as I could say that the photograph is not absolutely unreal. There is a touch of reality in it. You are there and it's an image of you. So you are the reality, but the photograph, which is only an image, is not totally unreal. But if you are seeing only the photograph and not seeing the reality, then you are in ignorance. But if you see the connection, then you can go back to the origin, you are in knowledge.
Now, in the forms of the people, if one sees the divine presence.
Yes. That's the best you can do. That's
Exactly.
that's exactly what happens. No? But there is a difference between the different spiritual planes. There is a gradation. So when we are in the physical world and we are seeing all the forms and we think that this is a reality, we are in ignorance. We are seeing only the many and without seeing the reality behind it. Then when you go make your mind silent, switch off the image making capacity that you have in the mind, you remove it, then you see it as unreal. But that also is only temporary. Then you go to the third level and you see that there is a reality which is creating these images, and the images are not total construction, they are not erections. They are realities with a relation to the reality. They are related to the ultimate absolute reality. So that you see at the highest level. So when you make your mind silent, that's why we have so many philosophies. The Buddhistic philosophy, Nirvana, the world is unreal. You have the Mayavada theory. There are many others also who see the reality and the world as unreal. So that's why there are so many different philosophies that come. All of them are valid partially. That's the whole point. So ignorance would only be a subordinate movement. Now it's clear, okay? So ignorance is a subordinate movement. It has got validity, okay? A suppressed or restricted cognition or a partial and imperfect evolving knowledge with the true and total self-awareness and all awareness concealed both in it and behind it. So when I am seeing even a stone, when I am seeing, the stone is the image. But behind and inside the stone also there is a presence, and if I can see that, I am seeing the reality and the projection of the form. That's what he's saying. Okay? But what does he mean by in it and behind it? Okay? So there is, the divine can express himself in three ways. The transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. The transcendent is, the divine can be experienced outside the universe, only in himself. When you experience the transcendent divine, you are totally unaware of the universe. You are seeing only the divine. But he can also express himself in the cosmos. And that is the pantheism. You see the divine in everything in the physical world. Trees, rivers, stones, animals, everything you see the divine presence. That's a pantheism, and that is behind. There is the form, and behind the form is the reality. Now there is the third, the individual. So is it only behind supporting the form, or is it in the form? So the divine is there in the stone, that's the individual, but he is also there behind the stone supporting the image. And he is also outside. So the divine can express himself in three ways. The transcendent, which is above, outside the universe. He can be behind the universe, supporting the forms. If the reality is not there, the form cannot exist. It's somewhat like if the cloud is not there, there can be no rain. If the glacier is not there, there can be no river. That's the origin. So if the origin is not there, the images can't exist. That's what he's saying. But the divine is also there in the form. So he is there in the stone, he is there behind the stone supporting the formation, and he is also outside.
Now, I want to ask you maybe to comment a little bit more on partial and imperfect evolving knowledge.
Yes. And when we are seeing only the forms, it's not a total unreality. After all, the forms, if you are not a Mayavadin, you see the forms have a... Again, we come back to the image of the photograph and the reality. Okay, the photograph is not absolutely unreal, so it's a partial reality. That's what it means. It's a partial ignorance, partial knowledge.
But it's evolving.
Yes, that's right. Through the photograph of the mother, I can reach the mother herself. It's possible for the human being to do that. Okay? With a true and total self-awareness and all awareness concealed both in it and behind it. And what is this self-awareness and all awareness? That also we have to be clear. Self-awareness is inside yourself you become aware. Individually you are aware, and all awareness is in the universe. You are aware of the divine in the universe. You are aware of the divine in yourself. Self-awareness. You can also use the word individual and also universal. Okay? So, it would be a temporary phenomenon, not the cause and essence of cosmic existence. So, the cause and essence of cosmic existence. Okay? So, he's saying that if you are a Mayavadin, you are seeing only the forms and you are thinking that that's the reality. You are in ignorance. But if you are seeing both, you see the reality and the representation, it's a temporary phenomenon. The world is not unreal, it is temporarily real. It's real in time and space. That's what it means. So a transient thing is a semi-reality. The photograph is not unreal, but I can throw it and destroy it. It goes away. So the reality is permanent, but the photograph is not permanent. That's what he's saying. The world is of that nature. The world is going on changing, and the forms there they are temporary realities. But the second stage, the nirvana experience of Buddhists, they seem to think that that's the ultimate truth. That's not the ultimate truth. You have to go beyond that. Okay? So, not the cause and essence of cosmic existence. These are all phrases in the sentence. Its inevitable consummation would be a return of the spirit, not out of the cosmos to a sole supracosmic self-awareness, but even in the cosmos itself, to an integral self-knowledge and all knowledge. So, he is now talking of the ascent and descent. Okay? So, he is saying that an ascetic who makes his mind silent and experiences the self, and he is realizing that the self is the absolute reality, fine. But what about the world? He rejects the physical world as unreal. So, is that the ultimate thing? Swami is saying, inevitable consummation, the last thing, the inevitable consummation, the end of the journey successfully. Okay? Inevitable consummation would be what? A return of the spirit. Not to the spirit, of the spirit. So, he says that the ascetic is ascending to the divine and blotting out the universe. He is very happy with that. But inevitable consummation would be, by the way, the consummation, you must be clear, consummation, a successful completion. Okay? So, inevitable. It is bound to happen because there is an evolution. So, he says that the inevitable, finally evolution will end up with this, the spirit will return to the universe. And there will be a divinization of life itself here. So the last sentence is, he's
Yes.
explaining what it would be.
Yes. Interestingly, I've been seeing on YouTube that even Elon Musk is saying the world will be destroyed in 12 years.
That's right. But what happens to the reality? That even so many others also are saying.
Yeah, many are saying it.
Okay, so that there's going to be a pralaya. Then they are saying that the California coast, that great rift that is there, they are saying that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. It will disappear into the sea, they are saying. It's not a question of if it will disappear. Can it disappear? No. It is bound to disappear at some time. The entire Californian, that the Great Rift, they call it, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's continents break and they go on joining and all that. No, so that's, and interestingly, since you're mentioning, even George Washington had a vision. You have heard of that?
Yes. Yes.
That America at that time will grow and become prosperous and rich, but there will be an end to it. He had this vision.
Yes.
Frightening, but and it may not be only America, because there will be a collapse of values and the real values will come. So this is note the last. It's very important what he's saying last. He's saying it's inevitable consummation. The inevitable consummation of the world, okay, would be a return of the spirit, not out of the cosmos to a sole supracosmic self-awareness, but even in the cosmos itself, to an integral self-knowledge and all knowledge. Integral self-knowledge, the physical world is partially real, the ultimate reality is absolutely real. That's the integral knowledge. And there is a growing evolution here, and the spirit is revealing its splendors here in the physical world in bits and pieces, in slow evolution. So this is going to be, he's telling in very coded language, if you want, that the ultimate reality would be a divinization of matter and the appearance of a supermental race on earth. That's what he's saying very clearly here, but the language is a little complex. He's saying it's not an escape out of the prison, prison house of universe into the spirit. It's a descent of the spirit into matter. That's what he's saying. Look at the words carefully. Its inevitable conception would be a return of the spirit, not to the spirit. The to the spirit is what the Buddhists are saying and the ascetics are saying. But he's saying return of the spirit, not out of the cosmos to a sole supracosmic self-awareness, but even in the cosmos itself, to an integral self-knowledge and all knowledge. That would be the end.
Next paragraph, he explains even more.
Okay. Now, he's been talking about the supermind, which is the ultimate. It might be objected that the supramental cognition is, after all, not the final truth of things. Beyond the supramental plane of consciousness, which is an intermediate step from overmind and mind to the complete experience of Satchidananda, are the greatest heights of the manifested spirit. Here surely existence would not at all be based on the determination of the one in multiplicity. It would manifest solely and simply a pure identity in oneness. But the supramental truth consciousness would not be absent from these planes, for it's an inherent power of Satchidananda. The difference would be that the determinations would not be demarcations, we'll discuss this, would be plastic, interfused, each a boundless finite. For there, all is in each and each is in all, radically and integrally. There would be, to the utmost, a fundamental awareness of identity, a mutual inclusion and interpenetration of consciousness. Knowledge as we envisage it would not, as we understand it today, would not exist, because it would not be needed, since all would be direct action of consciousness in being itself, identical, intimate, intrinsically self-aware and all-aware. But still, relations of consciousness, relations of mutual delight of existence, relations of self-power of being with self-power of being would not be excluded. These highest spiritual planes would not be a field of blank indeterminability, a vacancy of pure existence. So, what he's saying is, he has said that the supramental is the place where you get the total reality. So now he's saying somebody may object and say, first we thought the physical world is real, then we went to the nirvana experience and we thought that that is real. He's talking about man in general, okay? We thought that that is real. Now you are saying that the supramental is the ultimate thing and that will manifest. How can you say that that's the last? That's what he's asking. Why not think that there's something beyond that? That's what he's dealing with, that question. Okay? Look at it. It might be objected that the supramental cognition is, after all, not the final truth of things. There could be something more than that. Okay? Then he's answering. Okay?
Mother has told us this.
Pardon?
Mother has told us this.
Yes.
That there would be planes above and the evolution would not cease.
That's right. But it would be an evolution from knowledge to further knowledge and not from ignorance to knowledge as it is now. Okay? So, that's an important thing to remember. Now, he is answering. Beyond the supramental plane of consciousness, which is an intermediate step from overmind and mind to the complete experience of Satchidananda, are the greatest heights of the manifested spirit. Okay? Beyond the supramental plane of consciousness, which is an intermediate step from overmind and mind to the complete experience of Satchidananda, are the greatest heights of the manifested spirit. Here surely existence would not at all be based on the determination of the one in multiplicity. It would manifest solely and simply a pure identity in oneness. So, he has told you that the supramental is not the ultimate, it is the intermediate between spirit and matter, between Satchidananda and the physical world. It's an intermediate thing. So, but before that, the heights, he's saying of the heights, the highest, the complete experience of Satchidananda are above the supermind. The greatest heights of the manifested spirit. The greatest heights of the manifested spirit. The reality of the manifested spirit would be there, above the supermind in Satchidananda. Here surely, now the argument is continuing. Here surely, existence would not at all be based on the determination of the one in multiplicity. It would manifest solely and simply a pure identity in oneness. He is saying that the objection could be that in supermind, you are seeing oneness and multiplicity. But will it not be so that if you go above that, there will be only oneness? That's what he is asking. Is that not possible? The objection. And he is answering that. Now he will answer that. Yes, there can be, the question can arise, but we can think of it in this way. He is going to explain. But the supramental truth consciousness would not be absent from these planes. The higher planes would contain this supermind. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, the supramental truth consciousness would not be absent from those higher planes, for it's an inherent power of Satchidananda. It's not a derivative power of Satchidananda, it's an inherent power of Satchidananda. The difference would be that the determinations, that means the forms, would not be demarcations. So, we are seeing this light as completely separate from that one. I am seeing all of you sitting there, you are completely separate. But in that condition, in the highest planes of consciousness, I would see all these, but they would have an underlying unity would be there. Again, I can give an image to explain this. Think of a picture. Okay? Think of a picture. And now I'm going to make a jigsaw puzzle out of it. So I draw lines where I'm going to cut. Okay? I've drawn the lines. Then I cut. Where the line is there, I cut. But I don't separate. I cut it. Am I seeing the whole picture or not? I am seeing the whole picture, but I am also seeing where I have cut. Now, separate these by 1 centimeter. All you see. You stand back, you will still see the total image. Separate them even more, they become separate pieces. They become, what's the word he has used? They would be determinations and not demarcations. So the difference would be that if you are below the supermind, you will see the demarcations. You will see the things as separate, but you will be able to see the demarcation. But in the planes above it, you will see only the lines. You will not see, you will see the whole picture and you will see where it could become separate. Determination and demarcation. You would see only the lines. So you will see the whole picture all the time. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, to carry the image further, if I go on separating not 1 centimeter, but 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, that's what we see of the physical world. We are seeing only small pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. We are not seeing the unity behind them. But put them all together and you will see the whole image. That's the supramental cognition. Okay? So, there would be now, let us understand what he's saying. There would be difference would be that the determinations would not be demarcations. They would be plastic, interfused, each a boundless finite. In other words, we go back again to Blake. The infinite contains the finite and every finite contains the infinite. So you come back to that same idea again. You see a connectedness. Okay?
A boundless finite.
Pardon?
A boundless finite.
Yes. A boundless finite.
Yeah.
The infinite contains all the finite things. Just like the seed. If the seed is a small piece, but it contains everything that it can produce. But you spread it out, you will not see leaves and fruits in it. It has the inherent. They are all inherent in it and it can produce all these things. So, he has answered the question whether there are planes above the supermind. He is saying yes, there are, but there you will see the oneness as well as the totality as well as the separateness. You will see. But the unity will be more important than the demarcations, the separations.
And the difference in that and the supermind?
He's saying that that is something that we have to see. Because it's a question that comes up. Nobody has been able to describe these planes above the supermind. Because, as he says, up to the supermind, you can have glimpses of the supermind, but even no individual has been able to place himself permanently in the supermind. The consciousness, you can have experience of it, not even at the Vedic period. The Vedic period also there are experiences. Swayambhu also had experiences of the supermind, but not a permanent stationing of the consciousness in the supermind. And if you want to go beyond, the connection with the physical world gets cut and you can't come back to give a report. That's the thing. You can't come back to give a report above.
Did some of them live partially? Some of the early disciples live partially in the supermind?
Yes, partially means you get a glimpse
yes.
of it and
yes.
it comes back. So, you get a glimpse. Okay? So, and now he is explaining what happens in the planes above. Okay, so he's saying there would be the utmost, to the utmost, a fundamental awareness of identity. In other words, I would be seeing everything. I would be seeing the gold behind all the forms. I am seeing the forms, but I am seeing that the form is not essential. I am seeing the gold is essential. That's what he's saying. The unity would be more real and permanent rather than the forms that come. Okay. For there, all is in each and each is in all radically and integrally. So, radically and integrally, essentially as well as in form. There would be to the utmost a fundamental awareness of identity, a mutual inclusion and interpenetration of consciousness, penetration of consciousness. My consciousness would merge with others and there would be a understanding of the whole. That's what he means. This is also possible at the cosmic consciousness level, but here it will be permanent. And mutual inclusion and interpenetration of consciousness. Knowledge as we envisage it. We understand knowledge by the mind. That would not exist there. That's what he's saying. Knowledge as we envisage it would not exist because it would not be needed. We'll explain this. Since all would be direct action of consciousness in being itself, identical, intimate, intrinsically self-aware and all-aware. So, there are instruments of knowledge. When I am seeing the physical world, I am using my senses. So, there is something to be known, there is a knower, and the knower is using instruments of knowledge to know the to be known. There is the object, there is a subject, and the subject is using senses at the lowest level. When you go to the spiritual level, you are using subtle senses. When you go up, even higher up, even subtle senses disappear and you are using intuition as the instrument of knowledge. At the highest level, the instrument of knowledge becomes identification. I identify myself with whatever I want to know. So knowledge disappears. Object and subject become one. Knowledge disappears as such. Identification is there. That's what he's saying. Knowledge is not necessary. Knowledge is the one that connects the object to be known with the knower. And if the object to be known and the knower become one, knowledge disappears. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, but interestingly, what he's saying is that since you are seeing the differences also, there would be, what he's saying is very interesting, you will see that. Knowledge would not be needed, since all would be direct action of consciousness in being itself. Identical, intimate, intrinsically self-aware and all-aware. Self-aware of yourself and all-aware in the physical world. But still, relations of consciousness, relations of mutual delight of existence, relations of self-power of being with self-power of being would not be excluded. In other words, I would see somebody else, I would see Narad, but Narad and me, there is a relation. There is a oneness as well as a relation. But if there is a oneness, you can't have a relation. But there it is possible. And this relation can be of different types. It can be a relation of consciousness. It can be a relation of ananda. It can be a relation of power.
Yeah, delight of existence.
Delight is ananda.
Yes.
And it would also be your power will have a relation with my power. Your consciousness will have a relation with my consciousness. They are separate, yet essentially one. So that's what. So in other words, oneness and yet two-ness, because two-ness allows relations. Okay? So that's what he's saying. Relations of consciousness, relations of mutual delight of existence, relations of self-power of being with self-power of being. So self-power of being, Narad. Self-power of being, me, would not be excluded. Okay, but self-power of Narad and self-power of me is same. That's why you're using the same word. Okay, self-power of being with self-power of being. He's not making another. He's saying the same thing.
Would not be excluded.
Yeah. Then would not be excluded. That is possible. These higher spiritual planes would not be a field of blank indeterminability, a vacancy of pure existence. It would not be something blank and one. There would be multiplicity, but there would be the complete harmony between all these and a connectedness. That's what he's saying. The divine is not a blank. This is also, we can see, we have an idea that if two people reach the divine, they'll have the same consciousness. That's not true. In the physical world, when two people are divine, they have different natures. Multiplicity is a fact. That's why I told you that ignorance is not to be seen as something negative. It is, the divine wants to see the many, but he also wants to see the oneness. So, they can be separate at two stages, but at the third, stage 1, separateness. Stage 2, only the oneness, without the separation. Stage 3, oneness and separation both. So, then ignorance is not a negative way, it's a positive way. I want to see the many, I want to see the one. Another way of seeing that also is another image. Images always help to understand these things. When I am on the surface of the world, okay, in the physical world, I am seeing the many. It's very obvious. Okay, I am seeing all of you, I am seeing houses, I am seeing streets. I sit in a rocket and go up. I go into space. I am in the space station. I am seeing the whole world now. I am seeing only the one, the totality. I am not seeing the many. So, there are different stages. Depending on which level of consciousness you are, you see things in a different way. There is one last paragraph remaining for the chapter, and then we'll go into another very big chapter, Brahman Purusha, Brahman Purusha Ishvara, Maya Prakriti Shakti. It's a 40-page chapter, but we will do one thing. We will give the basic concept and then we will read the chapter. It's a difficult chapter.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all. Namaste.